Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your questions for our guest into the comment box, and you'll see me turn my head. I'll check from time to time. I am a number one fangirl of today's guest. Sara Moulton is the host of public television's Sarah's Weeknight Meals. She is a protege of Julia Child. Sara was founder of the New York Women's Culinary Alliance, executive chef at Gourmet Magazine, food editor of ABC TV's Good Morning America, and the host of several well-loved shows on the Food Network. Sara is the author of several cookbooks, including her most recent one, Sara Moulton's Home Cooking 101, How to Make Everything Taste Better, a cookbook and teaching manual aimed at making readers more confident and efficient in the kitchen. Sara is a regular contributor to Christopher Kimball's award-winning Milk Street podcast, which I listen to all the time. Let's welcome Sara.
Hey, Dara. So nice to be here.
Thank you again for being on the show. I know it's a busy time. Other than the show today, what else is on your plate?
Well, we just launched yesterday season 12 of my television show, Sarah's Weeknight Meals. And I do the website component of it. I mean, we shot it all a while ago. We shot it in May and June, but I do the website part. And, as I'm not a spring chicken, the technological part of it is a little challenging. Good for the old brain, but anyway, I'm very busy putting up all the content that goes with the show. So there's that. And then we've been traveling a bit, me and the husband personally, and that's been fun. And then, I still do the Milk Street. Oh, and I decided to get rid of 1,500 cookbooks. So I'm working on that. I've found a happy home, but I've got to get them all organized and everything.
Well, it's funny that you say that. I'm actually writing an article for J Living. They said we have the food issue coming up. And I said, well, we can talk about my cookbook addiction and how when I moved, I had someone who bought every one of my books. I got to pick my last 10 that I wanted to hang on to because there's no way, you're 1,500, I was 300 plus. And I would sell off from time to time. I had tried donating it to a local culinary school, but they didn't want it. So I did what I could.
Well, that is what you're doing. It's a culinary school.
It was an addiction, and I'm going to click back to something. I mean, way before some of the things that we had going, I would get the Jessica Biscuits catalog. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And I'd rip through that and get it. But enough about me and my cookbooks. People will have to wait for the story. I think it's titled, I Need to Go to Betty Ford Clinic for Cookbook Addiction. So let's dive into, Sarah's Weeknight. Moulton's page, saramoulton.com. You can put in your zip code and find what PBS station is running it and what episodes are being run. But first episode is Rome. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, we worked with two different women there. I went over with my producer partner, Natalie Gustafson. The good news is we like to travel together, so we get along. And we shot with a wonderful woman named Christina Bowerman, who's Italian, although she spent like 20 years in the United States, also in Austin, Texas, which is so interesting. And then went back to Italy and opened up a restaurant that was awarded a 1-star by the Michelin Guide. She's the only woman in Rome that has a Michelin-starred restaurant. It's called Glass Osteria, and it's molecular gastronomy. And she's a strong, wonderful woman, and we had a lot of fun, and we made her version of pizza. The crust was ready. Fasten your seatbelt. Ground up celery root,
Really?
combined with
Okay.
egg and some sort of binder flour and seasonings, and then it's smushed into a little pan and baked. And it's about this thick, and then it's topped with mozzarella and um, fresh tomatoes, and then basil oil, and ready. It keeps going. I mean, this is molecular gastronomy, so there's all these interesting things. She puts on ground up Szechuan, no, not Szechuan, excuse me, ground up um, lapsang souchong tea to sort of suggest the heat that you would have gotten in a pizza oven, meaning the smoke, the
Okay. Got
char,
it.
and then finishes it with spicy sesame oil. And it's just so good. And really, the funniest thing, and one of the camera guys agreed with me, that crust, for people who haven't had celery root, you'd think it's really strong celery flavor, and it's not as strong as regular celery, but um, it tasted like a corn muffin. Go figure. But anyway, it was wonderful. So we shot with her, and then we shot with a woman, Katie Parla, who's an expat American who's been there, I think, maybe 10 years now. And she does tours, and she's done a bunch of cookbooks. And we made 3 iconic pastas that are famous in Rome using the same base. So we started with, all 3 of them have guanciale. You should have seen the camera guys. They were all like fainting from the wonderful smell of the guanciale. So we did that. We made the 3 different pastas. And then later on in the episode, I make my own pasta back in my kitchen, which is a baked pasta, sort of loosely based on the kind of baked pastas you used to get at that wonderful restaurant in Providence called Al Forno, Joanne and
Huh.
George Clean.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I had the pleasure of meeting her at a women's chefs. Was it? It might have been I think she came down to DC. That's another story. So, but part of going, for people to understand, you don't have the luxury of 3 months to do this. Plus, weren't you on a cruise and teaching classes on a cruise?
Well,
So,
full disclosure, the cruise line is Oceana, and they are a sponsor of my show. So that's how we end up in these wonderful places to begin with. And I love working with them because, among other things, on at least 3 of their ships, it may now be 4, they're very firmly focused on food. Now, on all of the ships, and I don't know how many total there are, maybe 7, they have really, really good restaurants. But on 3 of the ships, they have a superb cooking school. And as somebody who sees herself first and foremost as a teacher, I have to say I was really blown away by the classes on these cruises. So, what we try to do, though, because we've learned, me and Natalie, you can't get off the ship in a destination and shoot a show and get back on, because you're only in port for maybe 6 hours, maybe tops 8 hours. But let's say you decide to go for it. So you get off the ship with everybody else. Sometimes you can get off a little early. Then you have to drive an hour and a half or at least an hour to your destination. Then you have to set up for probably 2 hours. And then you have to shoot for 2 hours. And then you have to break down for 2 hours. And then you have to rush back to the ship. And guess what? And this is universally true. The ship will leave without you if you're not there. So when we were in Alaska last year shooting in Juneau, I was so nervous. And it was because it was also really bad weather and we'd really cut it close. And the scenario I just told you, that I cut my finger very early on. And there's no time to deal with it. So I just kept it down and pretended that nothing had happened. Because what else can you do? I mean, I'm used to this because I'm used to live TV and stuff does happen. But
oh
anyway,
yes.
we tend now to shoot more before we get on the ship and when we get off the ship. And we did do this time. When we got off the ship, we shot in Parma. At a place that I think was probably underwater. Remember, they had the horrible floods there. But another one of our sponsors is a tomato canning company that a lot of my chef friends knew about. I discovered it during the pandemic, called Mutti, Mutti. And I love them because, among other things, they can cherry tomatoes. And cherry tomatoes are one of my favorite things to use for like a quick tomato sauce. Anyway, we shot in Parma at a tomato farm. And they'd had a lot of rain before we left, and then they got much more rain. So we were like sinking in the ground as we were, it was pretty cold. But, and then in the middle, because it was just a field piece, we didn't try to set up and cook, with somebody, with a home cook. We went to Naples and tried 3 different pizzas with this very delightful guide. All these Italians have these names that I like, sounds like they're out of video games, Mario, Luigi. This guy was Deo Golala, and he was very, very jolly, and he has his own TV show there, and he was my guide, and we went to 3 different pizza places, and 2 things impressed me. One is, in all 3 places, they make the dough. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in the United States who make pizza know this, but I didn't. They make the dough and they let it rest for 24 hours at room temperature. I would think at that point the yeast would be, dead beyond repair.
Yeah,
But
right.
no, and and then when they go to roll it out, stretch it, whatever, what they do is they pick up a ball of dough and they go flip, flop, and it just expands because it's so relaxed. And then they lay it down. It's no big deal to roll it out. But the second thing that was a revelation. Second thing, there's 3 things. Second thing was, the first pizza we cooked, we were really nervous because it was a very popular restaurant in Naples called Sorbillo's, and they were lining up outside the door. We had a hard out at 12 noon. They would have just kicked us out, And so Natalie and I are both like, oh dear, are we going to be done? Because he was just shaping it at like 11:45. And we're like, oh no, he puts it in the oven. Guess how long it took to bake?
I sort of read things, 45 seconds.
Yes. We were just like floored. But then the other thing is the pizza. I loved the pizza there in the last place we were at. But the pizza I loved the most was a little place that made deep fried pizza. Yikes. So good. So good. And so that was really fun too. Yes.
So much more of this along with Sarah's Moulton's show and Sarah's Weeknight Meals. So we have Rome, we have Parma. You have a great team and people that you've worked with for a while. Am I correct? Tell us a little bit more about that, because no man is an island, or it takes a village to do your show. Let's give them some
support or shout out. Let's shout them
out. Shout out.
Yeah. So my producer partner is Natalie Gustafson, and we've been working together since 2007. We haven't been able to do a show every year for obvious reasons. First there was in 2008, there was that crash. In 2020, there was the pandemic, but mostly we've sort of limped along. So we're 12 seasons in. So she's fantastic. We're happy partners. I find her very creative. She's good at the writing part of it too. I don't work with a script, but when we need something quick to post, she's great at that stuff. She's great at putting all the logistics together. She knows a lot of people. We have sort of the same vision of what we're looking for. So she's great. And then we have Stephanie Faison, who's the woman who goes out and gets the money. Something people don't know about public television: you can't even start shooting or do anything unless you've gotten all the money up front. You have to come up with a budget, not my problem, Natalie's. And then once you get all the money, then you can start shooting. And Stephanie's been going out year after year after year. I knew her when I worked at Good Morning America and also Gourmet, because she was a publicist for a lot of great chefs. And as my husband says, you always know who your real friends are, because there's the ones who reach out when things head south. So when Gourmet tanked in I think it was October 8th, I'm not sure, but October 8th of 2009, and we had 2 days to get out, and I'd worked there for 25 years. Stephanie reached out to me. She said, how you doing? Let's have lunch. So at that lunch, she mentioned that she'd done some fundraising on other shows. And I said, you want to come work with us? Because up until that point, Gourmet had found the money. So now we needed to find the money. So there's Stephanie. There's another wonderful woman, Adrienne Hamill, who's been on board she's from Baltimore.
Yes.
And she does a lot of local work in Baltimore, and she's enormously talented. And she's worked on just about every season. Sometimes it depends on how much money we get. Sometimes it's sort of me and Natalie, and that's it. But if we get even a little bit more, we always try to involve Adrienne because she's so talented. So she'll do the Ask Sarah's or the field pieces, or even just do the regular show with me. And we're really indebted to her because Adrienne's the person who introduced me and Natalie in the very beginning, or pushed the two of us together and said, you need to do this.
Well, I know figures have changed in what it takes to get a show on. I can only quote my late girlfriend, Margaret Sullivan, who produced for MPT, and she did Joe Nathan, Stephen Reichlin's show. And she says, you need $1 million before you can even blink. And I can imagine that that figure has gone up and what it was originally. So
yeah, it's pretty hairy. And actually, I'm not always sure we get that amount, but we figure out ways to make it work. I mean, Natalie and I have been in Arkansas on a rice farm working with a Cajun family, and that was really, really fun. Learning about rice and crawfish. They are complementary crops. When the rice, goes down, or rots or whatever in between seasons, the crawfish come in and eat all the old, stalks of rice. So that was fun. But at any rate, Natalie and I are there doing some of the prep and doing the dishes. I mean, you just do what you have to do. Yeah.
Right. Were there any other things other than flooding? I think I read something. I mean, you have filmed under some unique circumstances. Weren't there a couple other that you were standing in a pasture or something?
Oh, well, we've been standing. Well, this last one, the one in Parma, as it turns out, so we're standing in this tomato field talking to the farmer. Well, we had to have a translator on that. That's always sort of a drag because then it's a little removed. But at any rate, this wonderful Italian chef who works with Muti was there cooking with me. He was Carlo Cassoni. At any rate, he was there with me and the farmer. And so the farmer's explaining the crops and everything. And a very important part of many of the farms in Parma is it's not just one crop. So there they have cows for milk for Parmigiano Reggiano.
Yeah.
But it's not, so this farmer both raises tomatoes and also makes Parmigiano Reggiano. But what's also nice, the synergy between the cows and the tomatoes is cow poop, so it's the fertilizer. So there we are standing in a field that's quite muddy,
And aromatic.
Right. Well, it wasn't at that particular moment, but one has to think that, yeah, probably I was standing in some cow poop, Yeah.
I just, we were talking about live. You did a live show on Gourmet for a number of years, 96 to 2005.
Well, the Food Network, not Gourmet. I just want to clarify that. It was on the
Did I say Gourmet?
You did. I did work at Gourmet at the time, but it was on the Food Network.
The Food Network. I'm sorry. I get so excited when I'm around you. I'm your number one fan girl. So, and plus it's live, my empathy for all those shows that you did by doing this, because once this is it. If I screw up, it's there for perpetuity.
Yeah, but it
makes fun,
edge and excitement, and I prefer live.
Well, it's definitely challenging for sure. Jacques Pepin, how did he phrase it? He said there are many cooking shows on TV, but few are teaching anything. To learn about cooking, look at Sara Moulton, and that's Jacques Pepin. Now, what I want to tell people is follow her on Instagram, Sara Moulton. Follow her on Facebook. And she has recently started doing like these 30-second tips videos that I love, because I sit there and I go, where's the V8? I could have had that.
Only you and I at our age would know what that means. Where's the beef? Or where's the beef would be another one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that might have been earlier, but what was it? Oh, I'm digressing, but I'm listening to the Will and Grace podcast, and they come back and they're talking about, all these references for that time back in 96 and 98 that nobody now would even understand, but still get. So I digress. You do these tips that are wonderful. One of the ones that I liked was a potato ricer, to use that if you have spinach to get the water out of it. And anything else that you just use, just all these little tips. Wasn't your niece that said, let's start doing this?
Yes, this is exactly what happened. So my niece, Katie Murphy, who's a world beater, I wouldn't be surprised if 15 years down the road, she was the president of the United States. She's that kind of person. She's wildly creative at everything she does. Fantastic cook, just for fun. She's recently made croissant, I mean, who in their right mind would do that just for fun? I mean, unless you're a baker. She did the Claire Sapphire recipe, which is wonderful, from the New York Times. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do that. At any rate, she said, you have a nice following on Instagram, and your people who follow you are very nice. You should do more with it. I think really what happened was we have this family farmhouse in northeastern Massachusetts, and I was there with Katie and my sister, her mother, and brother-in-law. And one night I was making salmon, and the salmon had skin on it. And I said, Katie, because she's such a good cook, I'm sure she would have loved the tip. Let me show you this cool way to take off the skin, where you lie the salmon, half salmon, fillet, a whole side of salmon on the counter with the skin side down towards it, lined up to the edge of the counter. And then you put your knife at a 20-degree angle under the skin, and you pull the skin. You don't move the fish. And it's like an absolute magic trick. And she said, wait, I got to film that. And then she was like, okay, we got to do more of this. So in the beginning, we just went out and made it up in the backyard. And then now it's an official. We get together once a month, and we both sort of think about. And what's been really fun about it, besides the fact that it seems to have landed, people like it, is that I just decide I'm going to do something that I've learned. I mean, a lot of it's universal language, but some of it is very particular, personal. And a lot of it comes from, I mean, my focus since I was on the Food Network starting in 96 is on the home cook and trying to get dinner on the table every night of the week. Because when I switched from being a chef, which I did for 7 years working in restaurants, to being a mom and, working full time, I had the same
Right.
problem everybody else did, coming home at the end of the day and getting dinner on the table. But I love just thinking about things like when you cut a bell pepper with into strips, put it skin side down, because the inside is so much softer. And a lot of people know that, but a lot of people don't, or they've forgotten,
I agree with you. There's so much, on that. When I listened to Milk Street, I said I should call in and tell them about these tips. I'm just going to tell you, you can laugh. Things that I've learned.
Well, share them with me, and then when I do them, if I do a video, I'll say Dara Bunjon taught me this.
This was just very simple. You and I are diminutive.
Yes, this is true. This is very true.
Right.
I like
and
that's much
you
better
might be
than the S
you
word.
might be taller. I just got measured and I lost a half inch. So
I probably have too, but I'm not getting measured. I don't know why you would do that.
well, bone density.
Oh.
And the doctor. So
Well, they don't have to tell you. Well, anyway, go on.
Okay. So my hand is not large. I buy a sponge. I don't need this big sponge to clean everything, so I cut my sponges in half.
Nice.
And I stretch it. And, at the end of the month, I just throw that out or use that for other cleaning and go to the other, because I don't need a big sponge to clean the pot. Actually, a smaller sponge has a better capability of getting the corners. So that's one tip.
Very good.
And people at home, they make pasta. They put the pasta on a cold plate and put the sauce on it and wonder why the sauce gets watery. I put my plates in the sink. I put the colander over it. And when I drain the water, it heats the plates.
There you go.
There you
Brilliant.
go. So just those are my two famous tips. However you want to do it. But I just, I listen to Milk Street and go, no, I'll call up. She'll hear Dara. I just, we'll do it that. Which brings me to a point. Obviously, you're not going up to New England. So are you doing this through Zoom
No,
or
I am going up to New England.
every week you go up?
No, once a month we record 3 hours worth, and then it
Okay.
gets used for quite a while. In the beginning, Chris was going to come to New York every single time. So we started in 2016, and he was going to come every month. And he had a fair amount of business in New York, but then sometimes he couldn't. And the good news was my dad, who passed away in 2019, lived in Cambridge. My mom had passed away 6 years before him. So Milk Street would pay for me to take a train to Boston. I do radio with Chris, and then I get to go see my dad. So it was fantastic. But
Was that
increasingly, Chris has not been coming to New York, and I have been going to Cambridge. But I have a really fine, great girlfriend there, and I love the train ride. And I mean, believe me, I negotiated a raise because I go for 2 days to do 3 hours worth of radio. But I love his producer, Annie Sinisbau. She's just adorable. I probably pronounced her name wrong. But at any rate, it's a fun team there. And Chris and I have a good time. We
right?
do
I mean,
battle essentially every time, which is how he likes it.
well, I like that, you both have different viewpoints as to the question of the person calling in and what the situation is.
Right.
So it's a learning session for all three of you because sometimes the caller calls in and you go, we're back to, I could have had a V8 moment,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right. Let's talk about you founded the New York Women's Culinary Alliance. And when you founded it, it was around 70 people. They've just introduced a new website, 300 people strong. And going back to our past show, we were talking about diversity in the kitchen, and they've really addressed that and have some great programs. So if you're in the New York area, affiliated in any way, shape, or form with the culinary world, look up the New York Women's Culinary Alliance. But when you started it, wasn't it by suggestion? Was it Julia that sort of gave you the bug to start it?
Indirectly, what had happened is I was living and working in Boston, and I had ended up, lucky me, and working on Julia's show, Julia Child and More Company, and became very good friends with her. Julia had no children, but she had many children like me, many,
Right.
many, many. And so a whole bunch of us would hang out together or do dinner parties or whatever. And we all said, this is really sort of a shame that men have all these old boys groups, but women
Right.
don't have any of their own. So we founded with Julia, a bunch of us, the Boston Women's Culinary Guild. And then when I moved to New York, I encountered the same stuff and worse in New York City. So that is why with Mariah Rouge, one of my oldest friends who I was just visiting with in Richmond, Virginia, she's moved there with her husband, Guy, who's a chef. She and I did the Women's Culinary Alliance. I will say we went through a huge reckoning after George Floyd that was very necessary. And I think that part of the group is still being worked out, meaning no group survives unless you're willing to change and you're willing
Right.
to bring in young people and you're willing to recognize what's happened in the culinary landscape. I mean, when I started, women were barely in the kitchen. I thought it was for chefs when we first started this group.
Right.
That no chefs have time to belong to a group really, but then we didn't work hard as we well should have as the landscape changed to bring in women of color, and so we had a huge reckoning, and it's still playing out. It's still playing out. That's all I can say.
Well, they are addressing. There's quite a bit in videos available to people on the website being able to inform people about diversity. So they were definitely moving forward in that. Um, I want to tell people some of your videos aren't available, but a lot of what you do is on Create TV, and that's createtv.com. Am I correct? And
You
that's
know, I,
for,
I should know that, and I also should know there's an APT app. APT is American Public Television, and there's an APT app that reruns the shows, or doesn't rerun the shows, but runs the shows, airs a lot of the shows. So that's where you can find them. And there's also Hungry TV, hungrytv.com. I think it's .com. And that's where you can find many, many, many of the public television shows. So there's many places to find it.
well, your teaching method, we had talked the last time about, some thought it was controversial that rather than doing all mise en place and then start cooking, is do a little, start your cooking, and do the rest as you need it. Um, we're at a point I could talk to you forever, and we didn't get a chance to do a little advanced talking. Love live TV. The link worked for you, but it didn't work for me, so we were back in it. So here are my questions, and what was your best bite all week?
Does it have to be this week, or could it be last week when I was in Richmond?
Last week could be great. You were there with
Mariah and Guy Rouge. And that was really fun. I mean, it was just such an education because it's, as everybody knows, Richmond was the capital of the Confederacy. And so the Civil War history is very, very apparent everywhere. And so that was fascinating. It's odd. I'm going to tell you that this wasn't a finished dish. We went to something called the Bellwood Drive-In Flea. It's a flea market, but it's not really a flea market in my estimation, on John Davis Highway near Richmond, Virginia. Now, the reason we went to a flea market is my husband is avid flea marketer, right? So I was like, okay, I'll come along. So we went with Guy and Mariah, and Bill looked around. He was looking for books and records, but there was really almost no books and records. And really no furniture. What you expect to see at a flea. It
right.
was some clothes and tons of produce, and really unusual produce. Unusual for somebody who's not from the Latin community. So vegetables I'd never seen before. But one of the things I loved the most was a fresh chickpea in the pod. I've never eaten one before. I mean, all those shell beans that end up getting dried at one point were fresh. But the guy who was selling them, poor guy, we cornered him, me and Guy, and we wanted to know what was the name of everything and how you used it. But we saw the chickpeas, and he told us they're chickpeas. So we asked, can we taste it? It was really delicious, just straight up raw. So good. So that's the best bite.
Terrific. Okay. And if you go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I'm not exactly proud of this, but it will give you an idea of what was on my mind at the time. I would say to myself, stop worrying about how you look and caring about what men think about how you look or about what men think. Be more independent. I mean, pretty quickly after I went to college, I discovered feminism, but that was always a backdrop. And I don't know if you've seen the Barbie movie. Have you?
No, I had no desire to see it.
Oh, you must see it. It is
okay.
Fantastic. I recommend that all women see it, really, even if you could care less about Barbie. I could have cared less about Barbie. It's very thoughtful, very brilliantly done. And there's a speech in there in the middle by a famous actress whose name I can't remember right now. And it just sums up, a lot of the issues that women have grappled with over the years, trying to be comfortable in their own bodies, be comfortable around men, and get ahead in their careers. I can't recommend it enough. It's really a great movie. And it surprised me that I thought it was so great, but it was great.
That's great. Well, I mean, I've heard good things. I just go, oh, wait, I'll see it when it comes to TV.
Well, and it streams. That's fine. But please do see it because it's really an eye-opener. It was very well done, very thoughtful.
Okay. If you wake up, if you could wake up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
Well, I'm already pursuing one that I had already done a little bit when I was in high school, which is watercolors. But a new one would be also something that I pursued when I was in high school, but I'd really like to go back to it, which is to play the piano. I played the piano from second grade to 12th grade. Can I even read music now? No. I'm sure I could pick it up again. I don't know how I lost that, but I would love to play the piano again.
I would come back. It was interesting. I saw that you on the website or Instagram, because we sort of watch each other's. Mine is not as interesting as yours.
No, that's not.
But I saw they're doing watercolors. I'm taking watercolor classes right now.
Are you?
Yeah, because being in an apartment, you know, I painted. I had art in high school. I did some oils, but I go, I can't bring that into the apartment. The smell of oils, the cost of it, it's messy. So I'm trying to do watercolors. So we'll see. I take all these pictures of flowers and I go, I'd like to be able to sit and paint them. And you
Yeah,
just take
the thing is, you probably already know about watercolors. They're really hard because the paint dries like that. So you have to be completely ready. You have to have tons of paint mixed. You have to turn off the phone, shut the door, and get going. And it's almost stressful, but afterwards it's a lot of fun.
Well, it's really, there is method to the madness of it. And as you said, and as the instructor is, look at it, gather your colors, get them prepped. Now, sometimes the paper's too wet, you have to wait until it dries to overpaint, but more to it. So I'm probably not as far as you, but it's something to do that's a
Are
little
you
bit
having
different.
fun?
Well, it's not putting calories in on me. You know,
I never thought of it that way. Okay.
I'm not eating, I'm not cooking. So, you watch TV, I can nosh, I can put stuff in my mouth, but that we have in common. Okay. So we did Best Bite, 18-year-old self-advice, new talent. What didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
I don't know. It's I really don't know. I think we covered just about everything. Um, aside from the usual silly questions that people ask, I like the questions you just asked, particularly the one about your 18-year-old self. But no, I really have nothing else to add.
Okay, so let's remind people. Sarah's show is on PBS. It's airing now as we speak. We were here yesterday was the premiere.
Can I say one thing about that?
Yes.
It's very hard with public television to find a show, or can be. Here's how you find it, my show. You go to my website, saramoulton.com. At the top is a bar with choices. One of them is Sarah's Weeknight Meals. Hit that bar. It will take you to a page where it will prompt you to type in your zip code and your zip code and your provider. So Comcast, Spectrum, whatever it is, and then up will pop my show and when it airs and what days, because otherwise it's not so easy to find.
I was looking for the link, and when we switched back to the original producer, he didn't get the email saying I had the link, but it's there. It's very simple. In this area, it's MPT or it's WETA, and so you can find it. So just go to Sarah's site, follow her on Instagram. Not hard, Sara Moulton. You can't miss it. The ultimate teacher. Charming woman, lovely. And I thank you again for doing the show once again. I'm glad that I heard your voice in the press room at the fancy food show. I was sleeping.
That was fun to reconnect, wasn't it?
It was. It was.
Craziness. Yeah.
Yeah. So all the best of the holiday season coming up. Continued success with the show. And when you do the next show, we'll do another show here.
Sounds like fun. Thanks, Dara.
Thank you, Sarah, so much for joining us. Okay, everyone, my little food tidbit of the week. Former guest on our show, Nick Sharma of the Brown Table. He's a cookbook author. Actually, he's a molecular biologist, and his newest cookbook is called Veg Table. He just won the ICP Trailblazer Award. Congrats to Nick. And his interview that we did earlier can be found at the Food Enthusiast archives here on Facebook or jmoreliving.com. Next week's guest will be Jeffrey Landsman. His expertise is specialty foods, owner and partner of DMS Food Imports. He's president of Specialty Food Sales. His company focuses on gourmet, organic, ethnic, gluten-free, and natural foods. Monthly, J More Living is giving away a $50 gift card to some of our favorite local restaurants. Visit jmoreliving.com/contest to enter to win. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at food@jmoreliving.com or Instagram @Dara Cooks. All shows are immediately archived in video form on J More Living's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. Feel free to dig into our video archives of past shows. We truly appreciate it when you share a show with friends and family. And as I like to say, may your plates always, always remain full. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next Thursday.